All right, hi everyone. I'm Adam Cohen. We're watching Adam Cohen today. This is our Business Brainstorm session weekly, every Monday at 5 p.m. Eastern. All are welcome if you are a self-employed entrepreneur, CEO, business owner, thinking about starting a business, just interested or curious, or you just want to hear my great English mix and US accent, then you are welcome to join us every weekday, Monday at 5 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, and via the LinkedIn on the connection there that Mehedi did. So the purpose of this is a open dialogue, group conversation talking about business, politics, the economy, social media, the current affairs, and all things related to all of us that plays a crucial role in our day-to-day lives. Typically, what we do every week is we go around the group and we let everyone introduce themselves. As I'm your host, I will go first. My name is Adam Cohen. I'm the CEO of Adam Cohen Today, brand you see behind me. I also own Saks and Spencer Capital with new companies being launched, including Smash Mortgage, Saks Cap, which is our new blockchain company, and we will have more and more services coming online this year under the Adam Cohen Today brand, including digital marketing, social media, brand management, web design, etc., etc. Jeff, thank you for coming back again. It's good to see you again. And let's go around the room and do a quick intro, and we will start with Julius. If you'd like to just say who you are, what do you do, your quick 2-3 minute introduction of yourself. Go ahead, it's all you.
My name is Julius Nasso. I'm in St. Petersburg, Florida. I am a developer and construction manager, currently working on a boutique hotel project down here on the beaches. So,
All
been in the
right.
construction industry for 50 years, both in New York and here in Florida.
Well, thank you for joining us today, Julius. And let's go over to Will Hanley.
Yeah, hi,
Will?
I'm Will Hanley, founder of Our Becoming. My background is in neuro-linguistic programming. I was fortunate enough to be involved in its beginning and became acquainted with its founders and early developers. We created a method called modeling to study the inner thoughts and mental strategies of effective psychologists to be able to transfer what they learn to other people. Recently, my partner Robert Dilts has taken this method into the world of business, creating Mindset Maps International, which is international with 150 members. And we did interviews with hugely successful leaders like Steve Jobs, Mark Zuckerberg, Jeff Bezos, and a dozen others, and created the circle of success for startups or any business wanting to improve. We've recently added a business analysis tool for writing business plans and answer any business need from startup to end user. This resource uses the most powerful AI and 35 years of experience. So combining neurolinguistic programming with this amazing tool, I highly recommend anyone who wants to increase the power of their programs to take a look at the tool, and I'll leave a link to it in the chat. So thank you very much for listening.
Thank you. I have to tell you, although we live in the digital world, when it comes to technology, I'm pretty much a dinosaur. I'm still trying to figure out how to use the DVD player. uh, how do I say it? Arian? How do I pronounce
Uh,
that?
um, yeah, hi Adam. It's
Thank
Aryan
you.
Roshan.
hmm Well,
Yeah, okay.
nice to meet you, Arian. Thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Hi, hello everyone. My name is Aryan Roshan, and I have my own company here, and Infotech, to companies who are starting their brand presence in the world with the help of many services like websites, digital marketing, cloud, AI automation, ERP, as well as back office support, and many more. We have a huge team here with 50 plus employees, and we have all types of clients all around the world, in the United States, in the United Kingdom, in Australia. And we also help startups to have their own brand presence in the world.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us today. I see we are
Thank
aligned in some interests there. We'll talk more about that a little later. Jeff, thank you for joining us again. Do you want to do your introduction?
Name is Jeff Ackerman. I'm the principal of Rise Architecture. We have an architecture firm. We operate now. We have done work in 19 states. We have 3 offices: New York, New Jersey, and Florida. And we have work in 19 states, anywhere between apartment renovations through major ground-up construction projects. I think our tallest building is 19 stories in Manhattan, and our largest single project is a mini city in Blaze County, Florida, about 1,800 houses and 900,000 square feet of commercial space, give or take.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for joining us again, Jeff. It's good to see you again. I wasn't sure you were going to come back after the last one, but it's good to see you again.
Well,
Thank you for
I
coming.
happen sometimes, got to get cut off in the middle. I apologize.
Do you know, I love a healthy debate. If everyone's going to agree with me, it won't be very entertaining. I'd rather, have I'm not offended by an opposing opinion. Not at all. So I have my very good friend Cheyenne Andujar, also known as Johnny Vegas, who is the host of the podcast Sleep is for Billionaires that I've honored, I think, to be the only person to be interviewed twice on. All right. I think, by the way, if you haven't seen it, you should check it out. It's on YouTube and on Instagram. Johnny's been running this, or Cheyenne rather, for about 8 or 9 years now, I think. And it's a very interesting show. He's had a lot of celebrities on there. It's funny. You gave me a really good intro on our podcast. You remember that one, so that I can get you back now, right? So Johnny is also a recording artist in R&B, does great music. He's involved in raising money for film projects and various other real estate. He's a real go-getter, a great friend. And we used to be neighbors, and I may, or from time to time, have offended some of his former interviewees.
That is a lot. You never seems to amaze me with that one. All right. Now, good to see you always, Adam, and great to meet everyone. As you mentioned, my name is Cheyenne Andujar. Currently, I focus on business development across real estate, film, and tech as well. As he mentioned, also been in sales for the past 25 years, along with entertainment. Again, now I focus my efforts on sales and real estate, as well as raising capital for real estate developments, film finance, as of recently tech startups as well. So happy to be of service for anyone who needs my help.
All right. And I don't know if you've noticed that the hip hop was coming out of him, as he was saying it.
I see. You got some street
I
cred
caught
today. You got some street cred.
I caught that. So, and we have my colleague Mehedi Hassan, who runs our back office for the LinkedIn Business Concierge program that we've just recently launched, as people are already signing up for. And also, he does a lot of our social media marketing platforms that we are just getting off the ground as a new product for the Adam Cohen Today brand. So today I want to talk about, as we grow our businesses, and we're obviously new clients and new projects and new opportunities are obviously paramount to the future of our business. We all have our long time established clients that will always come to us for architectural design, for the very complicated thing that Will does that I'm not going to try to explain, for land development. We're always looking for that new business. And obviously social media, the internet, that is it plays a huge role now in attracting new clients. My question is for the group, what are you guys presently doing for new business?
I can start it off. So for me, I mean, yes, my method of outreach has always been old school. I start with picking up the phone and making phone calls, as well as, posting on social media, obviously, and then, also hiring other, salesmen to kind of do just that and kind of push my presence, but also outreach into the different endeavors that we have. So I just keep it old school, man. I'm always picking up the phone, that email outreach and obviously networking opportunities. Being in entertainment allows me to be in other rooms that just the average person is not in, whether it's, a gala or a movie premiere or anything like that. But you'd be surprised at high net worth individuals that are in those spaces that you get to network with in real time and obviously, create a good rapport with them just off meeting and then following up, right? As you know, the don't happen on the first engagement. It's always on the fourth or fifth or sixth follow-up where a deal actually happens. So that's typically my method of execution. If anyone has something different beyond that, please share with me. I'm all ears.
Well, I was very spoiled when I first got into business. When I started my first business when I was 16, the internet it didn't exist in those days. We had classifieds, we had the loot, we had the equal, like, I don't know, did the New York Times ever have a classified section? Jeff, are you aware of that? I'm not
Oh yeah.
100% sure. All right. But there were classified rags, we called them rags in the UK, that we would use for advertising. And I learned very quickly to master marketing through the analog era, right? I think that's the correct way of responding to it, like newspaper, print, and et cetera, et cetera. Flyers and events. Events were very big in the mid 90s into the 2000s. They were very big. When I first moved to New York in 2000, I worked with a Wall Street firm on Broad Street. I'm still very good friends with the former owners of that company to this day. And one thing I learned is if you're going to work on Wall Street, if you're not making 1,000 phone calls a day, you're not making money. It's the most high pressure role that I think you can play in sales. Nowadays, everyone kind of relies on social media, they rely on word of mouth. But what are other ways in which people are attracting the clients? Jeff, I'd love you to answer that question.
I'm not sure what the exact questions, you middle of a monologue, and then you kind of switched over to a question.
That's my way. Make sure you're paying attention. Got to keep those brain cells going.
So on getting new clients, we're going back to the original question, which we do a lot of outreach. A lot of times what we do is we actually call for meetings directly with who we feel as the decision holders within the conversation. But sometimes the second person below them is really where the decision gets made, or at least brought to the person who's the decision maker. So we try very hard to get to the executive level C-suite conversations, because like when we're doing architectural work for large development, usually the person making the decision, you're not getting a decision on LinkedIn for someone to make $100 million decision on LinkedIn because they saw you post on LinkedIn. So a lot of times it takes time and multiple conversations with them to get that decision made. So usually we find that people do business with friends. We try very, very hard to make friends with our clients. And I say the word friends at the point of friends of business friends, let's call them, where we create a relationship with them, and we feel that that's really where that makes a big decision on how we get business done in the industry.
You're in New York, correct, Jeff?
I physically am in New York. I say at least twice a week, but I go around to different offices because we do work all over the country. So I'm not. My presence is I'm in the New York office twice a week, but we do work all over the country. So we have meetings in random places. I'm in Florida at least once a week, or maybe sometimes once every other week, depending on the situation. In Jersey for sure, once a week in our offices. We fly to Chicago a lot. We do a lot of work in Chicago. Do a lot of work all over. So when we get these meetings, we find that decision makers like doing business with people that they like doing business with. Specifically, if there's a trust issue with large projects, it's more about trust. Do they trust your understanding? Do they trust what you're trying to accomplish? Do they trust you enough to hand you literally their life savings at times? And that's really what it comes down to. I think our average project size starts at $20 million. So for them, when you're getting those levels, they have to really trust your decisions that you're making, because they're putting a lot in your hands at that point.
Absolutely, and thank you for that. And you bring up a very good point about doing business with friends, and I'll give everyone a chance to speak in a second. One thing I've learned, there are three major cities that are specifically very social. They're New York, Chicago, and Boston. They are very, very, very social cities. And it's very much a face-to-face professional high-end meeting when you're looking to do business with clients in those cities. Florida, California, from my experience, are a little different, more laid back, more relaxed. But one thing I've learned in the United States, and I think it's the same in the UK as well, it's very much about trust, respect, past projects, past performance, and believing in your capabilities, believing in who you are and what you bring to the table, and understanding how you're going to bring something to a new project that's going to be unique, more competitive than the next person that gave them the bid. But most important, that I find, because I get a lot of business, not because I'm the cheapest or because I'm the most expensive or because I'm the best. A lot of people come to me because they trust me, because of relationships, because it's about confidence. It's you're selling that experience. They're not paying you for the job you're doing. They're paying you for all the jobs you did that provide for you to do the job you're doing. So trust is enormous. It's not just, hey, they see my handsome face on LinkedIn and then they go to me and say, hey, I want to do business with this guy. I have to compete for business against everybody else. Which leads me into my next question. And Julius, I'm going to let you answer that, and then we'll come back to you, Will. Is how do you deal when you find that you have clients where you have a good project, they know what they're doing, but you have very unrealistic expectations? Because I find in my business in the lending space that I see almost on a daily basis, I have borrowers that do not understand that their credit is terrible, that they are not going to qualify for a bank loan, that they're in foreclosure, they're in bankruptcy, or they need something that's so creative that no conventional bank will do it. They understand to some extent that point, but when it comes to trying to explain to them logic, math, economics, it just goes over their head and they're like, no, I'm in bankruptcy. I have 300 credit. I've never paid a bill in my life, but I want a 4% rate and I won't settle for anything less because my deal is the best. I see this so often, it's almost laughable. Julius, I'm curious to hear, because I know you're in a similar background. You're in the real estate development space, and I'm also a developer by experience. How would you manage that situation?
I typically don't, I'm not in a position where I'm, bringing people in that are looking for funding. My situation, I am actively working with equity partners and lenders to build the different projects we're working on.
Yeah.
Um,
Not to cut you off, but equity partners, as you said, require a lot of management. If someone's going to invest in your project, all right, they
yeah.
have expectations. The goal of any development deal is all of the investors should somewhat be significantly similar in terms, but that's not always an exact science. So, from your experience, how would you address that?
Well, I try to manage people's expectations, but I will not work in a situation where someone is not able to perform or not able to step up because they're not a accredited investor and get them involved in a project. I learned that dealing with friends and family investors initially, that's not the most efficient way to approach a project, especially when it's in the tens of millions of dollars.
Thank you, Julius. Will, would you like to add something to that?
Well, I know that you're all correct about that. No one's going to do any business with you unless they trust you. So that's what I do. I offer free advice and I try to find out what their actual problem is, what's underneath, what their belief systems are, why or why not are they successful at their business now. So again, we use psychology, to go deep dive into a person's mental strategies to find out uh, what exactly their business beliefs are and work from there.
Uh-huh. Which leads me into my next question is everybody is looking for the best deal, right? Who doesn't want a good deal? Who doesn't want to obviously save every dime on their project? It doesn't matter if it's a real estate project or a non-real estate project. Obviously, there are three of us here that are real estate guys, and well, you're a tech guy, but the fundamentals of every business deal are the same. You have someone who's looking for the best deal, someone looking to provide a service that's looking for the opportunity. Without those two things, we're not, and none of us are doing business. All right. So when it comes into negotiation, and again, this is a good question for Jeff. What would you say is where do you say the threshold is as to how far you can negotiate on a transaction?
I try not to negotiate on fee on our services, because what happens is that, what we calculate, at least the way we price jobs specifically on what we believe the amount of time it will take to do the job and the services that we provide for it and the necessity to keep our staff happy. and accommodate the work necessary. So if a client will come back to me, we used to negotiate. If I take a step back, we used to negotiate and allow people to dictate cost at times. And I would ultimately hurt our projects because we need the time to do our projects properly. If I don't do a project properly and I don't give you a proper set of drawings, chances are someone's making a mistake someplace at some point in time. So if we don't have the time and to do the proper services that we need to provide, we find that ultimately it's just a bad project and everybody's upset at the end of the day. If we negotiate properly at the beginning and we have a proper fee associated with it, then the person who agreed to give the fee agreed with that number. We agreed to give the service for that number. And we find that if we're happy with the number that we are, and they're happy with the number they're giving up at the same time, usually we're both happy at the back end because we can provide the service that we need to provide, and they're happy. If someone's coming to us and says, well, I have someone cheaper down the block, typically the answer is that we don't want the project to begin with, because if they're just looking for that person cheaper down the block, chances are that we're both not going to be happy at the end of the project because they're not happy paying our fee, and we're not happy providing a service for that price.
And Jeff, I have to be honest with you. I had a funny feeling that our theories would be aligned on that one, and I'm going to come back to that in a minute. Julia, so I'd value your input. I know that you would be, and this would affect you, I'm guessing, largely when you're trying to obviously acquire a project at the right price or managing with investors about their IRR expectations.
You lost me on the question. I had you, and then you went off.
That's okay. I'm like,
Yeah.
we all have and I raise money for development projects as well. So I'm doing it right now. So I know exactly, we're all looking for those investors at the end of the day. But I find that a lot of investors come to me with very unrealistic kind of expectations. Hey, I'll invest in your deal, but I want a 30% return on my money. You know they have the money, you need the money for the project. It's going to make sense. Then you have another investor that's going to be like maybe 12 or 13%. There's a variable, all right? So you get the investors that they're ready they have the money, they're ready to do business, all right? But they're trying to push you on your fees to make less money for you and more for them. How do you manage the expectations where you say, hey, this is my bottom line, I can't go? How do you manage thresholds?
It depends. First off, it depends on the particular investor, but I've learned over my years of experience as well that negotiating a fee, negotiating numbers like that does not make sense. You know, when you put together a deal, what the numbers have to be to make it work and what's going to be equitable for both your team and the investors that are putting up the equity. And if you start to deviate from those, that's when you start to have problems with the project. You either shortcut some of the work or the quality of the work. You just don't want to do that. You have to stand your ground when it comes to what the expectations are, what you believe you can deliver. And hey, if we are able to deliver more than what we promised, we're happy to do that. And then we get a success fee in that process as well. No.
All right. Thank you for that, Julia. Will, would you like to have your 2 cents on that?
Well, for us, it's a matter of finding out exactly what the problem is, or what the person is really focused on. If they want more percentage, I agree with Julius. If you tell them specifically what they're paying for, and that if they pay less or want more stock, it's going to be less of a program for them because you've already worked it all out. So if you sound confident about your project, it goes a long way.
Cheyenne, do you want to chime in on that?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question one more time?
Yes, we need to pay attention. So we're talking about knowing your worth. Like, for example, if you're negotiating with a client on your fees and they're saying, and you're a realtor in Los Angeles, so someone says to you, hey, you say I want 3% for a listing or 4%, I'm not sure what the market is. And they're like, I'll pay you 1.5. The guy down the road said, I will pay you 1.5. He will charge 1.5. I will pay you the same. How do you decide where the limit is for negotiation? What is your logic or rationale behind making a decision on the threshold by where you'll negotiate your fees and for your services?
Well, I typically don't go past a certain point, but I always like to reiterate my value proposition. and just let them know exactly what I'm going to be providing to the deal, whether it's, doing all the paperwork or picking up all the phone calls when I do hold the listing, instead of them having to do it themselves, and really kind of identifying the steps that I have to take to make sure the job gets done so they don't have to do it, right? And then that's essentially what they're paying me for. Now, if they want to rebuttal with, oh, well, somebody would do that for less, then okay, go with that person, but I can guarantee that they're not going to do it at the level I'm performing at, right? And, with cheap pricing come cheap service, and I always like to reiterate my value proposition in that regard, and just let them know, the level of service that I'm going to be providing. So, that may, and also let them know that a lot of times people would charge more for that service, right? So they're kind of getting a bargain working with me, but nonetheless, I never really had a problem with someone, you know, wanting to get my services cheaper on the first go around, right? It's usually after like the
Except me,
third,
maybe,
fourth, or
right?
fifth. Yeah, it's always, I mean, it's sometimes, right. But it's usually after the third, fourth, or fifth transaction that we've already done where they're like, hey, listen, do you mind, you know, taking a little bit here, but then we'll make up for it there. Like if I'm helping them acquire a property, I may take a little bit there, but on the listing side, because they usually list with me, I'll make it up for it on the back end. So, I'm flexible in that regard, but on the initial, time doing business, no, I'm very firm in my fees, just because of the level of expertise and, again, my value proposition that I bring to the table.
And that's good answers from everyone. And I feel that I'd like to kind of add something here. I think it comes from age. I remember when I first started in business, I was more anxious to please my clients. I was obviously more needy of growing my reputation and building my business. And as a younger mentality, you want to be a people pleaser. You want to show everyone that you're flexible and that you will bring in that deal. Even if like you're older and it's a new business, you want to be flexible because you need the clients. Once you get a little bit older and you get a little bit more experience, you start caring less about what people think. You all of a sudden you get that confidence in yourself that comes from your knowledge, from your experience, from your past transactions. And now all of a sudden someone will come to me and they will be like, hey, I want to borrow this land, and I'll be like, I want 3 points at closing, and they'll be like, I'll pay you one, and I'll be like, not interested. And it's not that I don't want to do business, it's just I've learned to say no. I've learned to value my time, my effort, my knowledge, my experience. And when I give a price, I already think that price is fair, so I'm not going to negotiate against myself. And I think we've all mentioned it here. There's always someone that's willing to do something cheaper. There's always willing, but you lose something with cheaper. And I often find that clients that go for cheaper always end up coming back to me, usually crying, saying that they've wasted their money, they've lost valuable time, and now they need to start over and do it again. And I find that experience gives you confidence, and if you have to rely on that, then that's where your negotiation skills are. Your negotiation is based on who you are and based on uh, the value that you put on your own time. Because, like I said, people aren't paying you for what you're doing today. They're paying for the 35 years, in my case, of experience that I've learned to do everything that I'm doing, to do it at a high standard, to do it efficiently, the network that I've built in order to bring to the table what my company can bring to the table. So you're paying for experience, you're paying for relationships, you're paying for the experience and the knowledge. And so another question I'd like to lead into as we kind of getting into our second quarter of 2026, has anyone here noticed that the demand for business has dropped off and that there's kind of been a change in the air by the way people are looking at new opportunities and negotiating on them? Or do you feel that we're still in 24, 25 levels? Anyone?
Not sure I fully understand the question.
I'm basically alluding to, have we felt that going into 2026, that business is at the same pace and same level and same demand and same level of execution, or have we seen based on the economy, based on the war, based on the cost of living, that things have slowed down a little?
I haven't really seen much of a slowdown necessarily. In fact, one of the things we used to work only in New York. We had an office only in New York. And one of the things that happened then, we opened up our office in New Jersey. What that allowed us to do is actually operate from there more towards the entire United States. And then we opened up in Florida, obviously. But that allowed us to actually will fluctuate depending on markets. So markets change. I wouldn't say just overall when you say general business, they would fluctuate within the states themselves, within nationally. So you may have less work in one state and it can fluctuate to another state pretty quickly. So we're seeing that, yes, we have sometimes slowdowns in New York. We'll be busier in Jersey, busier in Chicago, busier in Florida. Then things may slow down in Florida, then we'll pick up stuff in New York. And we see that fluctuation back and forth pretty often. And I would say so far, 26 has not seen much of a slowdown necessarily on that frontage because of the ability to us to pick up on different fronts at all times.
Julius, what about you?
I think I've seen a bit of a slowdown in this area here, and I think it's got a lot to do with the fuel prices and material costs going up significantly with construction because of that. I don't feel like it's going to be a long-term situation. I believe that it'll rectify itself shortly, but I just think that the beginning of the year we started off in a little bit of a slower mode than I've passed.
Will, to you.
I've seen a slowdown, and this is, again, I focus on business coaching and international business coaching. So our group has noticed a slowdown, and hopefully, part of it is because of the war, especially with China. We don't have any clients in the Middle East, but we do have in Ukraine, and we even have clients in Russia. Those areas, there's a slowdown, yes.
Cheyenne, what about you? Have you seen a slowdown in the market in the Los Angeles neighborhood, or is it still busy over there?
I've seen a slowdown from the traditional transactional standpoint, like people taking out, loans to get their mortgages and stuff like that. But on the off-market sector where, interest rates don't really affect investors, they're kind of just coming in cash or hard money that's honestly been picking up more and more because more properties have been coming more available because a lot of people are like defaulting on their properties and things like that, or they're looking for the quick fix and flip or development opportunities that they can get below market value. So in that regard, I've seen things pick up. But on the traditional side, yeah, I have seen a slowdown. And mainly to your point about, economic changes and people just in fear of AI taking people's jobs, or, things in LA are getting more and more expensive and people just can't afford to live here. So they're kind of transitioning to other states and stuff like that. But I think it's dependent upon the industry as well, because just different industries that you're involved in, because like even tech or even film finance as well, although those investments tend to be a bit more riskier, you kind of have to find the opportunities that are de-risk and have more elements attached that can, I guess, be deemed a safer bet, if you will, for lack of better words. So, it just kind of takes that pre-qualification process to be a little bit more thorough with the opportunity you take on from the selling and brokering standpoint, as well as the investing. So that's my answer.
It's interesting. So I'm going to talk about real estate here for a moment because it's, one, two, like four against one here. Sorry, wow. So I apologize in advance. But most people know me. I have a hard money company, Sachs and Spencer Capital. I've had it for about 10 years. Before that, I was partners with another group that I had that for about 10 years. And personally, I have seen an enormous slowdown in two sides of the hard money industry. I've seen, on the one hand, the demand seriously slow down, and I've also seen the appetite for the acquisition of our notes from the banks that always used to buy them from us has also slowed down. And I've also seen that the expectations from investors no longer really make a lot of sense to us. So according to that, we've taken a huge step back on the commercial lending side compared to where that was always our most aggressive approach. We liked doing deals from say 3 to 30 million. But on the one hand, I've seen demand for that space it's dropped off maybe by about 70% over the last 12 to 18 months, which is a big drop. We were probably bringing in about 5 to 10 new loans a week at one point. Now it's going to say 3 to 5. It's sometimes more, sometimes less. It's okay. It doesn't really bother me too much. But I have noticed that the lending side, the commercial lending side, the construction side, there's been a huge kind of deviant to where it was 2 years ago. And on the flip side of that, and Cheyenne sends me deals to look at every day, I'm seeing that deals don't really make any sense. How can you buy a performing cash flowing asset when the interest rates are higher than the cap rates the properties are being offered? So I think that we're seeing a weird market, and as Jeff said, it varies state to state and city to city. There's definitely a change in the feelings, and a lot of banks speculate that there's going to be an enormous collapse in the real estate market very soon. It may or may not be the case, and it may be the case in, say, Pennsylvania, or like Detroit or places like that, but maybe not in Beverly Hills or in Miami, where we're seeing record growth. But I do think there's been a change and a shift in the environment. And on the other hand, the demand from investors looking to invest in development opportunities, the demand for new housing, I'm seeing that, and as Jeff said, there's no shortage of demand for that. That's actually seeing growth. So I think that my point is that the wealth have money to keep doing business, and on that side, those in a strong position are continuing to reinvest and to grow in the right opportunities. But people who are in distress, or people that are not in that wealthy bracket, I personally am seeing an enormous drop off and again, I'm seeing this on the liquidity side as well from a lot of investors. The liquidity and the drop off as far as like where we were 2 years ago today, I've seen an enormous change in the market. And I don't know personally if that will change in the next 6 months or the 12 months. I don't think it will happen for as long as we remain at war, for example, with Iran and the Russia-Ukraine. And what are your thoughts on that, Jeff, for example?
It's hard to say how the war affects operations across the board. I understand that the lending side and banks, there's always speculation, there's always nervous and speculation. But I've always realized that if I relying on total speculation, things usually fall off the wayside. So I said, like, for instance, like during COVID, I said, people should buy gas. Gas dropped to the floor and was worth nothing. Why? Didn't make any sense in essence, but they assumed we were going to stay in COVID forever and therefore it was going to be worthless. I don't think that's a valid interpretation of it. So we're going to sit in war and therefore no one has to live. Also not a good interpretation. It's not possible. Now, yeah, there is an issue with cost and other things of the sort that has to be funneled through the market. And there's always the class aspects of it, that there's a major difference within the classes within the US, and the gap's growing bigger on a daily basis. But there's still a need for living. There's an impossibility. The amount of houses need to be built for the masses, it just doesn't exist. And if we keep immigration at the level that it's at now, that just gets worse on a daily basis. We're talking about alone in New York alone, when we were doing work for the city. They were doing migrant housing. We're talking about they were housing migrants in roughly, we designed a loan for ourselves. We designed 2 migrant facilities that had between roughly about 3,000 beds. Just 2 different facilities, and that's just 2 facilities that we did, and we know that there were at least another 10 facilities being designed at the same time. Imagine all of them, and we're not kicking them out of the US, so where are they going, right? Where are they going to be housed? It's very nice. Within 3 years, they're all going to live in normal apartments. They're not willing to live like, I can show you what these places look like. Trust me, I don't think anyone in this film wants to be in one of these places. They're going to need to live someplace. There's just not enough beds and doors for the people in the US. There's got to be an influx, a requirement. Now, the more that there's not enough product, the more the cost of the product will go up. It's just the supply and demand issue. And it's something that's going to have to be dealt with. We can sit here and say, well, the demand's low because we see personally in our own circumstances, but the facts are, there's just not enough doors for the families that are here, and that has to be dealt with at some point.
And by the way, I agree with you that because a lot of the availability of homes around the US are pre-war, dated, and obviously, like those with resources are looking for modern, shinier, and newer. And then we have, as you said, the immigration base, the poverty base that are there's a shortage of that. And then if you look at all these city and government run programs for housing, it's an interesting niche because there's the diversity between one versus the other is so enormous that and I hate to use this phrase because it's interesting. I used to say back in the 90s when I was buying and selling properties in London, I used to say the cream is in the crap, right? Because you could make such high yields on buying properties in crappier neighborhoods, buying them so cheap, versus and government rents used to make it so worthwhile, except when there's a shutdown and obviously you're not collecting the rent. But it's the high-end market, obviously there's a lot of nervousness that, for example, there are properties in Miami that are brand new that aren't selling because the banks don't want to lend on them. They just feel that the market's going to drop and that they've overbuilt again and they're continuing to overbuild. But then you have that, for example, 500,000 to $2 million range, which is quite affordable for a good chunk of the country now. And I personally believe that that is one of the strongest markets, or at least it has been, and I think it will continue to be so. I think I don't know how AI putting people out of work will affect that long term, but in the short term, there's still a lot of people that are now investing in the market, doing their job, doing a second job, and can easily afford and manage that price product, especially in states like Arizona, Tennessee, Memphis, for example, where I'm working on a big project, Northern California, we'll say Central California, like Texas, the Golden Triangle, Northern Florida, which is seeing record growth now as people leave Miami and Georgia. I think these states are catering to that middle market. And you're seeing a lot of people leaving different cities like Los Angeles, like New York, like Miami, to go to those demographics because you can get a lot more house for your money. You get to live in a nicer neighborhood. The prices change. They have good stores, and I think we're seeing, interestingly enough, a big migration pattern in the US of people leaving the bigger cities to go to newer markets, and then the poverty areas kind of getting variants as well based on different government programs. So I think it's a very interesting market, right? Well, what do you think about this?
Well, I'm not in the real estate business, so
You're a
but
consumer.
it's been very interesting for me to hear you talk about this.
And I apologize for those of you that are not like real estate driven. For me, I've been in real estate for 30 years of my life, so it's become somewhat of a passion and a hobby. I wouldn't say it's who I am, but it's probably a big part of who I am. It's definitely defined my character. Let's talk about that for a second. How many people here think that your profession defines your character? Just out of curiosity.
Yeah, I think so.
Go ahead, Rob.
I think it has an effect. I want to say define. Define is a very definitive word where it gives you a full. I think character should come from multiple different places other than just what you do for business. Does it affect how you interact with people and what you do? Yes. Define, I would try to push against.
Okay, thank you, Will.
Yeah, Adam, I want to ask you, is this tiny house movement from China having any effect? Where you're buying a house that's pre-built for $8,000 to put on your own land. I mean,
Not yet.
you see a lot of advertisements for that. I'm wondering if it's having any effect on real estate.
They're great advertisements, and one of the issues with those products is that they're very nice in thought, but the facts are that if the land is not willing to accept it, which is the biggest issue, anybody in the land development will tell you that you have to have running water and sewer. You can't just plug it down wherever it is. And the bigger issue is getting running and water and sewer to those stations, which is the most expensive part of the project.
So the problem, I'm going to chime in here, and Jeff, I think I'm going to agree with you. I've seen these pods. They have them in China. There's various different types that you can get, and again, but the problem is as power, water, sewage, drainage, electrical. For example, we've like what do they call them? Mobile home parks. So you have a mobile home park where they provide a slab and then they put a trailer on it or what have you. The thing is that I had a client that wanted to do this in Northern California where they wanted to build this enormous like pod community. But But it basically, when the reality set in and they had to bring in all these utilities, the whole project fell apart. It was only profitable when you thought about bringing in these pods. But can you imagine that you have facilities for caravans? Because essentially, if you're not going to have water, sewer, and electric, then you have basically a non-movable caravan. All right, is that what they call it? I don't know what they call it. That's what we call them in England. All right, so it's you need. So how does it function? People need running water, they need a toilet, they need power, they need Wi-Fi, they need cell service. I think it's a good idea in theory. I know, for example, one client that I have that's building, trying to struggle it. It's I think they called it. They're like the low energy, very cheap, prefabricated. I think is the best kind of like models where they come and they just kind of they're not on a foundation. They sit on a slab. They connect and everything. But you can't give them fee title. Like you can't really like it's real estate play. It's more like a mobile home because it doesn't get fee simple title. You can't really the only loan you could get in it would be equal to like a car loan or something like that because then it's not tied to the ground. It's not moving. It's kind of a weird niche. It might be something that with solar and some kind of thing for water and energy, and it may be something down the road. But I'm going to be honest with you, people have asked me about these projects and to finance them. And when I've looked at them, I've said no. I've said I don't see it, or at least not yet, until there's such infrastructure that would make it work. And keep in mind, just for an example, like the US has got some very strong weather patterns. In the Northeast, you have very bad snow. We don't know how they would function in the extreme cold. We know that anything, for example, like Tesla, doesn't do as well in the cold as it does in the California sun. In the Southeast, you have hurricanes, right? So if something isn't attached to the ground, like anywhere from here to say Louisiana can be hit by a hurricane. In California, you have earthquakes. In the central, you would have tornadoes. So how do any of these things fare in extreme weather, the likes of which we know the US is prone to? It might be good, for example, in Nevada or in Arizona, where the weather is hot and less aggressive. But those are two states, or New Mexico, that come to mind. But for the rest of the country, I don't see it as being practical. Julius, what do you think? We can't hear you. You have your thing on mute. Your mute thing is on.
Yep, got it. The manufactured housing market seems to be getting stronger, and it's not a mobile home anymore, but it's something that somebody like Berkshire Hathaway is putting out a product that they're basically building a home in a factory and then delivering it in several pieces and assembling it. It's hurricane anchored because it has to be according to here in Florida, certainly to comply with the Miami-Dade building code. And those properties are, relatively successful. They're cost effective, not they're putting them someplace where there are utilities, obviously, whether it be a planned community that has the utilities in place for the individual homes. But it's a different story if you talk about trying to put a pod or something along those lines up in the mountains somewhere where there are no utilities.
So I have two words I'd like to respond to that, and they are Hurricane Katrina. If we look at what happened in New Jersey and and these are houses with foundations, right? And in the North Carolinas, go ahead, John.
Adam, I just want to. I think there's a big misconception based on what I'm hearing from the conversation. There's a big difference between the word manufactured homes and modular construction. Julius is talking about a modular construction product, which is actually full-fledged real construction and just built in a factory, anchored on site, and it's just as good as any other house you would buy and do conventional build. There's something called manufactured housing, which is what you were referring to before. They're two different products entirely. And the product is manufactured housing. You're right. Banks will not fund them because it becomes almost a business, like almost mobile home style. The product Julius is talking about is actually modular construction, which is anchored properly and nothing will fly. It's actually built better than 90% of the on-site built product. I've actually done a lot of homework into this because we're doing right now a massive project in Florida. We're building, and we're actually part of the development team as well. We're building now 1,800 houses and 900,000 square feet of commercial space there. And the houses there, we did a lot of research into modular construction versus conventional build. It happens to be in Florida right now. Conventional build is cheaper than modular construction, but from a product perspective, it's the exact same product. The only difference is we're putting it up, building in a factory, shipping it to site, anchoring it on site, and it's the exact same product versus manufactured home, which is an issue and is an issue when it comes to banking and stuff of that sort. Now, the
So I have
other
a question
issue,
for you, Jeff.
yeah,
I
the other
have a
issue with
question.
modular construction, yeah, the other issue with modular construction is on banking is that one of the issues that we have with banks when we try to do modular construction is that since we're buying the product from a factory, they want to get 50% deposits when they build it and start manufacturing in the factory for us. And then the bank doesn't want to fund it because it's not yet on site because they want the ground to act as a hedge against the investment. And therefore, they don't want to give us money on product that's mobile yet until it's actually on site. So we end up with a lot of money out of pocket until we get it in. So the modular companies are working on their own financing options where they finance it internally from themselves. So we could put down like 20%, they finance the rest internally, then we ship it, the bank covers the rest of it, something like that story. Concept. Yeah, go ahead.
So what you're saying is
And
there
Jeff,
might be a niche for me to come in and do the contract financing for modular housing.
There you go.
That's interesting. You see, thank you, Jeff. You've just given me a business idea, something to think about. But that leads me to a question. When you talk about
and
anchoring a modular home, and I'm not I haven't covered this yet. It's like any development projects we're doing, we're working with foundation built from the ground up type properties. So with a modular housing, like I said, thinking of Hurricane Katrina, where we saw the damage, we saw in North Carolina, in Jersey, we saw houses literally floating down the street, being found 10 miles away from where they were. How do you anchor a property to resist Hurricane Katrina, Hurricane Sandy style hurricanes that are coming in
Adam,
strong?
these are really rare. These are really rare events. I mean,
Anyway, circumstances,
Katrina
right.
it happened in Katrina. It's never happened any place else. I mean, basically the United States is very, very free from earthquakes, any of nature's problems. So I don't think there's I don't think that's an issue really.
There's no
Well,
real
earthquakes
way.
happen across the US all the time. We just don't always feel them.
There's no real way to protect against certain extreme situations, right? But I'll give you an example. Hurricane Sandy, the biggest damage that happened in Hurricane Sandy is what most people don't actually realize because they're busy with the houses floating down the river. That wasn't the biggest damage. Hurricane Sandy saturated the ground with so much water that it put pressure on the foundations and basically pushed the buildings out of the ground and cracked the actual foundations, which the biggest cost factor, with 80% of the homes that were replaced, was cracked foundations due to water pressure from under the ground, not from damage that you saw houses damaged. So what happens, you saw houses still standing and they became not livable because their foundations cracked from the water pressure. That's something you cannot predict, nor could you protect against, because it's literally underground pressure. Now you could have buildings that have, even the buildings that had the flood vents that allowed for the water to flow through, the pressure from the ground shoving up the houses out of the ground, they pushed them almost 2 feet out of the ground, causing them all to be not livable. All the foundations were basically not valid. They ripped down hundreds of houses because they were not livable because of it. So that's something you can't predict against. And that has nothing to do with modular construction or conventional build. You can build a brand new house. You can build a building from scratch. Ain't going to make a difference when it comes to something like that.
And you're right. All I can tell you about Hurricane Katrina and Hurricane Sandy was it was very good for me for doing a lot of construction loans at that time. That kept me very busy, so I wasn't complaining about it. But that being said, I was on site, on the ground, and walking through properties that had been completely destroyed by the hurricane. And I remember like not being able to get gas, highways that were closed because of trees that were blocking, alligators on the road, snakes. It was a weird time, and I wouldn't say they're that rare because I think they happened 5 years apart, and yes, we haven't had one since, but any moment that they say if you believe in global warming, then there's more to come. If you don't, then we shall see. Because I'm kind of on the fence. I'm not a scientist. So wrapping up, any questions from the group that you'd like to share?
not a question, but just one of the things to Jeff's point about modular homes is that time of construction is significantly reduced because they're being produced in a climate controlled environment. They bring them out to the site, they're put together in no time. So your time of start to finish is greatly reduced on site.
We just
And the
installed a
probability is significantly higher. I have a client
Mhm.
that's just outside of Austin, and he's doing a modular home development in an area called Marble Falls. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with that area. It's about 40 minutes outside of Austin. And he's doing an enormous, they own the land free and clear. I think they have like 200 acres, and they're doing an enormous modular housing development. And I'll be honest with you, it's a fascinating project. I've been on site, I've walked some of the properties with him, and I did his ground loans when he was land loans when he was looking for them back in the time when he was getting ready for development and start putting in utilities. So I will say it's an interesting approach, and I think we're going to see a lot more of modular housing simply because of the low cost to build and the fact, but you can't, it's not so easy to sell. I'm not too sure. I think different states have requirements because you can't issue it's more of a leasehold interest as opposed to a fee
No,
simple interest. Is that no? Or you can give a fee simple title for it.
I think you're mixing up manufactured homes versus modular homes. It's two different
Hmm.
products. Modular home construction is actual regular construction. They only just do it in
Hmm.
the factory and bring it to site. It's just as good, and it's not a fee simple. It's a regular loan on the product because a house is an anchor to the ground. The issue that you come up to, fee simple or not, is whether there's an anchoring to the ground or not. So if something's on wheels and it's considered a mobile product, it then becomes a version of a movable object, and therefore the fee simple loan on it, which is not entirely different. But when you come into something that's anchored to the ground, becomes a piece of property, and the loan goes against the piece of property as if it was a regular house. Modular construction is a different product. And modular construction, from perspective of cost, according to my research, at least in certain jurisdictions, it's still more expensive because, again, I can get modular construction out of Pennsylvania at like $97 a foot. I can build conventional construction in Florida for $92 a foot for much better product. So I'm not so sure from a cost perspective yet they're here yet. But modular construction is the same product, and it's even built better most of the times than actually built on site. It's a misconception that people have that modular construction is built worse. Now, manufactured homes, no questions asked, is not a great product, but it's manufactured homes, different product.
Jeff, thank you for that explanation. I'm glad you joined us today to kind of, that was, yeah, today we needed you. That was good timing. So I wanted to say thank you everyone for joining. And before we wrap up, I want to talk a little bit about a new service that my personal brand, Adam Cohen today, we've just started launching. I'm not sure if some of you have heard this before or not. You may have seen the ads on LinkedIn. We launched a new service just recently called Business Concierge. Business Concierge is essentially helping you grow your business on LinkedIn. And we are actually now in the process of adding all social media platforms from Instagram to Facebook to X and TikTok and YouTube and everything else, including website design. The main purpose of Business Concierge for LinkedIn is the ability that we could send out 1,000 messages a month rounded to potential new clients or existing clients to help you grow your business. It's a very good service. It's about $4.99 a month, and we can really help you get new clients and grow your business on LinkedIn. If it's something that you might be interested in, you can reach out to me after or at any time, and I'll be happy to share the details with you. It's significantly how I built my business over the last 12 to 15 years. The predecessor that Mehedi would work with, Bob Friedenthal, who is now retired, he handled my LinkedIn account. He grew me at one point to almost 60,000 connections. We lost some of those when Microsoft took over and cut everyone down to 30,000. But I was generating about seven figures a year in revenue just from LinkedIn. And I'm not talking about total loans. That would obviously be an insignificant amount. I'm talking about more than seven figures a year in commissions from the loans that we funded through the connections that I created on LinkedIn. It was a very powerful service for me. And when Bob's wife told me he was retiring, I reached out to Mehedi and I said, I would love to carry the torch and I would love to do this under our own brand. So we have launched Business Concierge. We are right now focusing on LinkedIn, but we are adding brand management, brand development, marketing, all social media platforms, helping you grow your image and grow your business and generate more revenue through direct marketing and ad campaigns on social media. If you'd like to know more, just reach out to me directly. Otherwise, I would like to thank everyone for coming today and for participating in this think tank or brainstorm, as we like to call it, and say, it's been very interesting listening to everyone contribute. And we'd love to see you here again and hopefully more next Monday at 5 o'clock Eastern.
Okay.
And if anyone else wants to
Thank-
say anything before we wrap up, by all means, here's your chance.
Thank you, Adam.
Thank you, Adam.
Thank you for joining us, Julius. Thank you for coming again, Jeff.
Thank you, Adam.
All right. Thank you, Cheyenne, for joining us, and nice to see you again, Will. I hope to see you all again next week.
Adam, where's your contact information?
I can just give it to you right now if you want.
Okay.
All right. My
Yeah, please.
email is very easy. It's adam@adamcohentoday.com. And my cell
Say that
phone
again,
is
I'm sorry.
31 adam@adamcohentoday.com.
Oh, okay.
All right. See the
What's
background
your phone
there?
number?
All right. My cell phone is
Oh, there it is,
310.
right there. Right.
It's right behind me. Adam at
Right, very good, very good.
adamcohentoday.com. All right.
Okay,
And
thank you.
my cell phone is 310-755-5251. You're all welcome to call me anytime. I will admit I'm very bad at answering my phone, but pretty good if you could leave me a voicemail or text me and calling back, which I normally do at the end of the day. And Jeff, if you're down in Miami, please give me a call or shoot me an email. It'd be nice to have a coffee and meet you face to face.
I'm there too often.
Well, I'm in the Sunny Isles area, so if you're around,
I'm at the Surfside, Sunny Isle. I have an office in Coral Springs, so I try to go in at least, and I'm doing a very big project in Glades County, so I go there pretty often. At least once every 2 weeks I'm down there.
and I'd love to pick your brains. We're looking at right now, we're doing a big project in Orlando on International Drive. I can't talk too much about that right now, but it's a very big project we have coming up. We have a few other projects in Orlando that are housing developments. We're doing a very big project, and this is under our new fund that we're launching on blockchain, which is basically taking crypto to convert that into investment into real world assets in real estate construction. And we have projects in Memphis, and we're just about to sign up a new one in Panama City. So we have a lot of development that we're going to be doing over the next couple of years, and there's maybe some synergy that you and I could talk one-on-one to discuss how that could be. And Julius, again, if we can ever be of any help with you with your real estate projects, I'd love to, have a conversation.
What again was this your cell number, Adam?
My cell's 310-755-5251.
755. The last
310-755-5251. If anyone's watching this on YouTube, I'm gonna get like a billion spam calls, but it's okay. I'm really bad. I'm very bad at answering my phone. I will say that, but I'm very good if you leave me a message and I know who you are, of calling back, which is like I said, I screen my calls.
Okay.
Okay.
My
We all have
assistant
to
does that
today.
usually. Yeah.
But if you shoot me a text with your contact information, I'll save it, and then you're more likely to get through to me faster because I'll know who you are.
No problem.
Okay.
We'll do.
All
All
right.
right. And as I said, Jack, if you're in the area, by all means, stop by. I can take you out for a coffee, or we can have some lunch. There's some very good kosher restaurants in Surfside, just down the
I'm
road.
aware.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining today. I hope to see you again next week. And tell your friends, by all means, please sign up for our newsletter and please follow our YouTube channel. Thank you very much, everyone.
Amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers, Adam.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye now.